TED Talks have absolutely fallen off of a cliff. Look, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, there were some bangers here and there. There were some very inspirational, there were some very informative TED Talks or clips from TED Talks. In the year 2025, they're a hot mess. Like, I've seen some clips from. I tried my best to watch a full episode of any of these people. It's not possible. I don't know who they're getting up there to do them. You know, there's two camps. I'm going to discuss the first one, which is more annoying to me than the second one. And this first one's a little bit more prominent. And it is the Obama overly scripted, just kind of monotone. It feels cold. It feels dreary. It feels unnatural. When I watch them, I think, is this... If ChatGPT became a person, this is what the person would be. And this is 70-80% of these TED Talkers, is they stand there and you can tell they're reading off a script. You know, everything is so crisp. Everything is so perfect. There's never an a like, a but, an or, an awkward pause. They read straight from a script. And they do the Obama cadence. And, you know, Obama's the OG of the Obama cadence. So it's okay when he does it. Other people are trying to, you know, they sound too much like him. It's not natural. It just, I'm not connecting with it. And you know, deep down, this is kind of my issue with it. Deep down, even if someone is not very high IQ, they're not very articulate, they're not a great public speaker, you can, when you're having a conversation with someone about something they're passionate about, you can still kind of know that they know what they're talking about by the depths that they can go into, by how their voice, you know, it's not polished, they're talking fast, they're really excited. You can tell that someone is passionate about something, that someone has a lot of depth of knowledge about something, even if it doesn't sound, you know, super tied together, super tidy. And that's kind of my issue. I'm not connecting, and nobody does. You know, look at the comments. Every single comment's like, what is this? You guys have fallen off. No one's connecting with the message, because you can't, if you're trying to talk about something that you really care about, you can't read off a script. You can't. It doesn't work. You know, maybe there's a few bullet points that you want to write down that you want to touch on. Okay. You can't read an hour-long speech off a script. It just doesn't work out. People can sense it. Now, my other camp, and this is maybe 30% of them, and sometimes there's crossover. Sometimes people do both of these things, but usually not. Usually they're separate. The other group it's kind of split up into two. I know I said there's only two groups, but there's like 2.5. The other group is the group that says stuff that is very surface level / unprofound. And then sometimes there's crossover into people who miscite or just lie. So the group that will say stuff that is profound, to like, you know, we're the peasants watching on YouTube, we're the peasants in the audience, and we're just on the edge of our seats. What are we going to hear? And you'll hear someone say, exercise is good for your health. Really? Exercise is good for my health? What? No way. Or they'll say something like, if you only sleep 5 hours, sleeping more will add 2 years to your life. Really? I'm going to be healthier if I sleep? And it's like, as a full-grown adult, or even anyone above the age of 10 years old, if you're listening to these speeches and take away anything and are like, I'm glad I knew that. You know, I didn't know that alcohol was bad for you until she told me. And I understand that you have to start somewhere. You don't get into the specific details and the nuance and the complexities of these things without starting. But that's the issue, is they just start. They just give you, it's like a little drive-by, and they just give you the one little bit of information. They're like, sleeping more is good. And I'm like, can we expand on that? How good is it? In what context? For what? Like, we get nothing? We just get sleep is good. Okay, I mean, everybody could tell you that. And the other group, and sometimes these do intertwine, the other group is just people who straight up lie or miscite. A lot of the lies are by omission, and what I mean by that is they're not necessarily saying things that aren't true, but they are leaving out important information that would give you a full picture to the information. A lot of this is in the diet world. Whenever people talk about diet and health, they will cite a study and give you correct information, but they will leave out the very important nuance to the discussion. For example, you know, protein. If you eat protein, it does spike your insulin. And if you eat carbs, it also spikes your insulin. Fat does not. And people will rightfully say that carbs spike your insulin, which they spike your insulin more than protein does. And they will draw conclusions to that insulin does have an inflammatory mechanism and nature to it, which is true. And then they stop there. They leave out the key fact that the keto diet, which is protein, which spikes your insulin, as well as fat, they leave out that those are also inflammatory. And nothing is as simple as just, okay, I'm going to give you the con to this. I'm not going to give you the complexity of how many grams of protein is where inflammation becomes problematic, because inflammation is how anything recovers. When you injure something in your body sends inflammation to it to, number one, limit mobility, so you're not able to flex it as much and get re-injured, and number two, to send a lot of nutrients to the area. So inflammation in some situations is good, in some situations it's bad. It depends. It's a complex situation. But a lot of times what these people will do is they will give you facts, but they leave out the operative discussion. They just kind of give you the one-sided facts. You know, in a political sense, a lot of people have been talking about gerrymandering recently. The Republicans say the Democrats are gerrymandering. The Democrats say the Republicans are gerrymandering. In all honesty, both are gerrymandering. If you want to debate who's doing it more, that's fine. I'm not discussing that right now. To say that, you know, if you're a Democrat, to say that the Republicans have gerrymandered and are trying to gerrymander, that is true. But we're leaving out the greater context. We're not including the fact that we're also doing it. And that's my issue, is the lying by omission. You know, we're not technically telling any lies, but we are being pretty misleading. And those, I would say, are the three main issues I have with TED Talks. And there also is kind of a level of, I'm not exactly sure what word I'd be looking for here, just of arrogance. You know, they act like they're some god, and it's just like you're not impressive, you're not informative, you're not spectacular in any way, you're not even engaging. You know, it'd be one thing if there was an expert that was very informative but just wasn't entertaining. That is understandable, because it's hard to be an expert in multiple areas. You know, you can't be a great public speaker and be entertaining and engaging and then also very intelligent. It's tough to do everything. But these people are nothing. They're not intelligent. They're not entertaining. They're not informative. They can just read. I mean, that's cool. I could read too. Let me do a TED Talk on some nonsense.